Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Jessica Schechter on the podcast. She's a certified personal trainer coming to us all the way from Texas, where I am just heating up a little bit just talking to someone from there. And she's going to Texas A&M, which Johnny Manziel, that's the one thing that really pops in my head when I think about that. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Well, I got to ask first of all, because I love torturing myself, what is the weather like in Texas right now?
The weather is absolutely perfect, I guess, for anybody. It's like 70 degrees. The high is going to be 80 today. But it depends if you're hot-blooded or cold-blooded, because many people here would much rather be in a cold environment, like 30 degrees with snow. So, hey,
But here's the problem, though. If it's 30 degrees in the snow and you walk out, you could get frostbite. If you walk out in 70 degrees, there's nothing that can really happen to you other than getting, sunburn. But I think all those people down there, they really just wait until it gets into January here and we get into like -20. Then they really, really enjoy being here. So it's just, yeah, this is just the beginning here. But it's nice to have someone from a warmer climate on. But before I depress our guests with the winter stories, because that's just.
No, if you have mountains or anywhere to hike like that, I think that's definitely a plus whenever you live somewhere cold.
Oh yeah, but so literally, since we're talking about this, so I was during the polar vortex like 2 years ago when it got to -60 degrees wind chill. I had a job where I worked outside, so I had to go outside for like 2 hours. Worst day of my life. That's a story that I'll tell my grandkids, but I've already told it on the podcast a couple of times. But it was bad. But before we get into that, Jessica, why don't you give us your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and adapt this lifestyle and how that led to where you're at right now?
Okay, so well, first to start, I'm 22 years old,
Oh God.
and not to make look, we're 4 years apart. It's really not. It's like, it's not too bad. You're 26, but you're right on the same level. So I guess I've always been into sports. I've always been active. When I was younger, I played soccer, but I think in 2018, when I started my freshman year of college, I started going to the gym and just really got involved in the environment. And I was like, I'm really competitive. So something I wanted to try was to compete. So 2018, I just 5 weeks out threw myself into a random competition. It was actually the summer shredding that Christian Guzman holds each summer. And I looked so bad. I looked terrible. Definitely took last. I remember being on the stage and looking at like Christian Guzman and Julian Smith in the eyes and just wondering at that moment, what the fuck am I doing up here? Excuse my profanity. I don't know if we're allowed.
No worries. I bleep them out anyway, so you're good to go.
Yeah, what the fuck am I doing here? And so that kind of fueled my fire. I remember meeting a really cool influencer there. Her name is Gina Scafoglio, and she is now an IFBB bikini pro. But like meeting her, and that was also what the fuck am I doing here moment out. She's so professional, so technical, very detailed, and I was like, wow, like I want that, But I didn't really know going into a show really how to do it. So I was 5 weeks out, just was like, I'm gonna work my hardest, and but I didn't have a coach or anything. So for me, it was kind of just doing a lot of cardio and trying to eat healthier. And like practicing posing in the mirror, bikini posing. It was a bikini competition. There wasn't a figure division or any other division there except physique and bikini physique for the men's. And so after I completely took a fat loss on that one, I really was confident too. But, I try not to, both of the preps I did, I try not to get on social media and look at like the competitors just because, there was really no point. You're just competing against yourself ultimately. So the mirror was my guide and I was like, oh, I look great. Turns out, no, I didn't. So after that, I met my former coach who his name is Grant still. And he was like, he tried to help me during my peak week of bikini, but it was just way too late in for that competition. So a couple months later, that was in June, in August, we got together and we kind of decided that figure was more for my structure. I have more broad shoulders. And that's where the real journey began, because at that point it was like, game on, let's do this. I have a coach. I know I've watched so many videos. I've gotten so much information. I've gotten myself out there a little bit more. Let me see what I can put into action, not unintentionally half-assed. Let's like go full on. And that's what I did for 12 weeks. And it was probably, people always can, I don't want to say complain, but people really do, play. I think you can, it's easy to play the victim bodybuilding, because it's really intense. You got to put your body through all this crap. But I think that was the best 12 weeks that I've ever lived in my life. Just the freedom of like going through that experience and watching every single detail in your body change is such an enlightening and insightful experience. It's like, holy crap, like look at the way that your body is changing and you can feel it. It's just such a really it was exciting. So anyway, last peak week, I was all excited, hyped up, and I ended up, so I competed at the Texas Cup. This was 2018. Later that year, I took first in my class. I switched over to figure, so took first in the figure division. And then overall, I got second. And this was out of about 51, 52 girls. So I did really well. It was awesome, man. It was so cool. I was just really optimistic about it. And I think that's really what got me through it was that like happy optimism, like, let's do this. And this is not a bad experience. This is like a lovely experience. But Yada Daniels actually took first in that. And she looked, I mean, just incredible. Like the build, I remember looking at the side by sides and being like, I want that, or not that I want that, but like that's the level I'm trying to get to because she looked like a pro in my opinion. And so, yeah, that was like the next goal. But, after I needed to get back in school because I'm really, when it comes to such intense things, it's either you can establish a balance or you go all in or all out type of thing. So the point that I was at, I was like all in, all out. And I think that's why I also did so well in that, and I think that's what a lot of people struggle with is finding the balance too. So that that became the next obstacle I was trying to tackle. And I was just really confused the next semester. So that was December of 2018. And then in 2019, I was like back in school, bodybuilding, but like doing school. And it was just a really foggy, I guess, time of my life. I wasn't sure what my goal was because I really loved this one thing, but I also had to prioritize something completely different. And so for me, I was like, well, okay, let me think about this realistically. And that's whenever I was like, I can make this work, but I have to change my mindset about this because bodybuilding is a sport, but it's also a lifestyle. And so for me, putting that into the perspective of I need to eat healthy, eat clean, still train, and do my daily stuff while prioritizing school, I don't have to work on getting, 20 pounds of muscle in a year while I'm doing this. Like it's a slow progression. I'm 20 years old. I've got time. I just need to be patient. And that's something I really am trying to focus on is like the patience within all of this. So, I took time that year to focus on school, ended up doing really well and still training my ass off. I've made a lot of progress, but not exactly in the sense of I've gained, 20 pounds. In fact, like I'm about the same size, I'd say, but I do have just a little bit more mass, much more conditioning. So I'm happy with where I am. But COVID then, once everybody decided to start prep in this January, which is kind of, where we were. It's like, okay, new year, let's start something new. And then COVID hit, and it's like these competitors that all started their prep in January are having to rewrite everything, restart everything, start from scratch, but at the same time continue where they're at. So, I watched from an outside perspective competitors literally prepping for 9 months, and I was like, oh my God, like that is the external world for you, like nothing we can control. We just have to keep ourselves under control. So right now, I'm kind of just like taking it aback, looking at the options that COVID really has, because the only thing that we can do is wait. I don't feel like I want to compete during such a, I don't know, hectic time. I want to be able to be free in this sport because ultimately, like, it shouldn't be so tense and almost like a hostile energy. Like, gotta, do this under these circumstances that the government or the world or like this pandemic, like, I'm just gonna coast it out and wait and continue, to free flow really.
That's awesome. And what was that like for you? I mean, starting this as a 20-year-old, because so many of our guests that we have on, they started at such a later age, like in their mid 30s or sometimes even their 40s. What was this all like starting at such a young age when most people your age are right, just focusing on school, going out, having a social life? What was this all like for you making that change?
Fun. I mean, I guess I still have a childlike mindset of like, this is all just fun to me, and I guess that really is the difference is like the difference between a 19, 20-year-old starting this and a 25 to 30 to 35 is like one is fun, one is business in a sense too, like integrating those because whenever I first started, and maybe it's just the way things have gone, but I was not thinking about like how am I going to, profit off of this in a sense, like how am I going to, put myself out there and start helping people per se. Because I'm 20. I don't have, at the time, I didn't have credibility really. I mean, I was a personal trainer, but that was about it. I didn't know anything about business. That's not my major. So like it was just all fun and games. But there's also people that are older doing this and they're like, this is serious. Like this is credibility. I love this. I'm digging into this. I'm helping people. I'm profiting off of this. Like this is game. And so ultimately, like I would like to land somewhere in the middle to where I can help, but everyone is different. Everyone's unique in how they carry out their passion. And so I'm kind of still in the childlike stage, I believe. I want to help people. That's kind of the goal. I believe whenever you set your mindset to, I want to help first, then money comes, really. Um, and then, profit comes and prosperity comes. Like, so if you're doing something you love, you're helping people, the rest will fall into place. It's kind of like how I'm viewing this. I'm also still 22. So, like, I know things will come into place.
No, absolutely. And one thing that's so interesting about this lifestyle is that when you really get into the thick of things, like in a prep, your mind just becomes laser focused. And I mean, everything is just about that prep. It's about, oh, I got to eat this many times at at this certain amount of time. I got to get my workout in. What was that like for you, just zoning in on that for the first time? Because for so many people, it sometimes overwhelms them just because you have to be so focused and just so into it when you get into it for the first time.
It's kind of like awesome. I mean, you're so driven that it pushes you. It's like you're in this tunnel, right? And like there's nowhere else to go except forward. So like you can choose to like walk back and start over, or you can choose to like run into the walls and like not know what to do, or you can choose to move forward in this tunnel. And it's like it's kind of fun because you see this light at the end and you're like, I'm getting there, I'm getting there, I'm getting there. And like each day you're getting closer. So it's just that feeling of achievement that really drives that. And I mean, it's nice to go into the gym and know that you feel confident in what you're doing. Like you're no longer struggling on like, well, what is my goal today? Like what am I trying to do? That was one thing that prep really made clear that I miss a lot is I'm in here to focus on this, to focus on this, to make sure I do this. And I know that after this I'm eating this meal. I know that I have like an extremely precise set of calories that I'm trying to um, eat today, and it was just very technical. And I think that is something I really liked about zoning in is you don't have to worry. I guess like that's the thing is that's the freedom is the discipline within it is like once you get set on that, you know exactly what you got to do to achieve that goal. Boom, like you're free.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a strict lifestyle too that I mean, it really doesn't leave that much time to think about much other things. So yeah, I mean, but like you said, yeah, you're free in it. I mean, a lot of people really enjoy that structure. And I mean, we have a lot of sometimes like ex-military people that become bodybuilders just because it's similar to that, but I love to also chalk genetics on this podcast because so many people in this day and age who, I mean, they're on Instagram, they follow all these other people. Oh my God, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back. People just don't realize that you can only be the best version of yourself. And so many times I have to like almost shake people down and tell them that it's like you cannot look like that person because first of all, you don't know how they got to that look. You don't know. I mean, some people are just born lucky. I'm going to be completely honest, and I hate to spoil that for a lot of people, but some people are just born to be more fit than others, and they just have that natural bone structure. I mean, I had people on here who had photos that they showed me of when they were like 8 years old and they had like a 12 pack, and it was like, okay, this isn't even fair. But I
Right.
always say whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And they have that one body part that just lags behind that they have to train into oblivion when they, get started. And it's a big struggle for them. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started working out and taking things seriously?
So, well, switching from bikini to figure, I knew from, how my coach at the time had told me, you got to work on your back. Because that's how figure is labeled as the X frame. You want to have that proportion. And so that was my main factor was like, I need to work my back, my legs. I had played soccer for a while. So those were already like, I knew I already had mind muscle connection with those. It was really my back that I honed in on a lot during that prep, my shoulders as well, which was probably the biggest transformation in the body that I saw was just this upper chamber of like my chest, my shoulders, and my upper back. It was like boom. And I was like, damn, like, okay, that's crazy what that does, you know? But now it's kind of like I see the comparison. Back then they didn't have wellness. They just implemented that. And funny because I remember reaching out to this girl named Jilly Jansen. She lives in a different country. Before I started any of it, I was like, hey, what division do you think I could do based on my body type? She had competed. And she was like, you should do wellness. And then I was like, okay. So I looked it up and I was like, oh, America doesn't even have wellness for some reason. So that was really why I threw myself in those. But now, since they have that as an option, I've looked at that and I'm like, okay, if I go into wellness, my back, like I can leave it and just really tone it because I've got pretty broad shoulders. I don't really need to work. I just need to work on the conditioning in that regard. But my legs, because that was also a critique or feedback that I got from the judges. My second competition was your glutes and your hamstrings need to come in, larger and more conditioned. As long as as well as my rear delts. And so I've been working on those and I've made a lot of progress, but I think the next competition I would want to do is wellness. However, that is where you made a good point about the comparison is again, bodybuilding is so subjective. I mean, it's so subjective to the point where if you replaced one of the judges with just another human, results may be completely different. I don't know how media and social media plays into this hierarchy that maybe people also see within competitions. But like, that's none of my business, like we're just there to take care of ourselves and like present our best package. But like, I noticed that in wellness, I couldn't find really any of the best or top pro competitors that had, natural breasts, which, don't get me wrong. I think that, breast implants can be extremely aesthetically appealing, especially on the right person with done by, a good job. But for some reason, first of all, I don't have the income, like I'm 20 and that's just not something that I focus too much on. And I also like the natural look of the chest. So I am thinking, okay, if I put myself in wellness, am I gonna need that? Like that's where the comparisons start to kind of fuck with your mind a little bit is like, do I need that to win? Do I need that? Because it kind of has become so mainstream. You look at most of the competitors nowadays and like they've got them. The only one I'd say like I don't see it really as much in, although it's still there, is like physique and figure. But a lot of bikini, they really put that in there. And with wellness, yeah, that's something I notice in it. I don't want to say, holds you back, but you're kind of just like, you wonder, do I need that? I want to know that, you can still be as natural as you can while entering those. So then it kind of causes confusion in my head.
Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna do something that all guys should have done and just say no breast, no opinion. I don't really have an opinion on. Although I will say some of these people that have the breast implants, I mean, it looks like they have a 4-pack on their chest basically because one part's really really defined, and then you have the breast implants down below. But yeah, it is something that we've talked about quite a few times on this podcast. Where for a lot of women, yeah, they have that pressure on them where they're just like they look at the winners and then they say, "Oh, do I have to do that?" And I just think people would I just really hope that the judges would say, like, no, it's not necessary to win. It's just maybe they had the best overall body. But yeah, it's a touchy subject. And I think some people just get it just because they want them, as opposed to just because they want them, just so that because they think they do better. And that's, I mean, if you're going to get something like that, I really do think you should have the right reasons for it, or at least, really need them. So yeah, I totally see the point that you're making there. But I mean, also with this lifestyle, your social life does suffer a lot. I mean, I can remember even in college, I didn't even compete, but I just got really, really in shape where, oh, hey, you want to go out for drinks? Oh, no, I got to go work out. And it's just stuff like that suffers. What was that like for you adjusting to this new lifestyle and sort of realizing that, hey, I am going to be a lot more restricted probably on times that I can socialize?
That's a great question, actually. Well, before I feel like I'm quite a homebody. I don't have this need to really go out all the time. I find peace within just like being in a small group of friends and whatnot. So really, what I found the biggest difference was is how my attitude was within the friend group is like, okay, we're all here for a purpose, and like do the best you can to help others and like serve others and be compassionate with what you have. So before that, before I ever got into working out, I feel I didn't really have a good grasp on how to be in a friend group in a helpful manner. Rather, it was more, going out and being kind of lewd, or doing things that aren't necessarily, I don't want to say like legal, but just, like
We've
just
all had our fair share of that in our lives.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Trust me, trust me when I say that. Yeah.
Right. So I feel like now it's kind of like, okay, these people, they understand. They will understand, because if you are selfish in the manner of, look, I've got to do this, like I have to do this for myself, then friends will be like, okay, yeah, like that's awesome. If they're good friends, they'll support you. And in fact, I think that inspires, or the motivation, it motivates them to also get in shape if they're not in shape. And then it puts you in a positive group. I got involved in like a lot of good groups of friends after this, and I still, like, I talk to them all the time, and I love the bodybuilding community because it really is a friendly environment where you can share knowledge and also just like keep motivating each other. So I think really that's where it changed, was literally within the friends that I make, which was a positive influence for me. And I think I've still kept like a lot of older friends, of course, because you never let friends go. Like friends are a big part of your life, and people are. So you always keep. It doesn't matter. Like people are just here to help. So for me, I think it's been a good experience to just keep in contact and know like you're doing your thing, they're doing your thing, you have your own power, they have their own power. Like we're all on the path to just like keep moving forward. It's how we mesh together and help each other. So I think I was able to benefit better.
What were your old friends' reactions like? Oh, Jessica's getting jacked.
Yeah, just that.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's we hear that a lot too. Where I just find that interesting. Where there was even someone at my high school who he took into bodybuilding, and he was not in shape in high school, and I was like, oh wow, he looks great now. It's just so sudden and stuff. But one thing that isn't talked about as much as it should be, it's talked about a little on Instagram and stuff, is nutrition. I mean, it's so important in this lifestyle, and it's just. I mean, 80 to 90% of the results that you get. What would you say are some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you started taking things seriously?
Oh my gosh. Everything. Well, first started with water. Like I realized how little, I got a water bottle because I realized how little I was drinking. And I think that's also a great investment. One water bottle, because you can sit around and buy water bottles and plastics bottles all day, but like geez, just, I don't know, it seems, just buy a water bottle, guys. Buy one water bottle and use it. And so that was my first thing, was water intake. And then second, freshman year, I think I ate out a lot, like would buy a lot of pizza. I loved hot Cheetos. Really loved Panda Express. Sweets at night. I was a big animal cracker person and cinnamon toast crunch person. Played a crap load of video games. So really everything. I mean, I knew the concept of like protein and like what you should eat and shouldn't. I was obsessed with Taco Bell. If you looked at my favor app freshman year, it was like boom, 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 Taco Bell, Taco Bell, Taco Bell, Taco Bell, so much to where I named my dog Taco Bell. I love food, and I think I was able to carry that love of food in a more healthy manner after I learned about this. So I'm like, I enjoy cooking. Like in my free time now, I can just cook instead of play video games or like do something kind of, I don't want to say unproductive, but like cooking is way more fun and productive whenever you know you've got like a really good outcome that makes a difference. Like it's just different than video games, you know?
I'd hope it would be different than video games, but unless you're playing like some of those cooking simulators. But no, yeah, I agree with you 100%. And yeah, again, it's the small things that a lot of people do not understand. And yeah, I mean, I'm so when I go to Taco Bell, I just get like a Baja Blast and some of those like cinnamon twirls and some of
Yeah.
those potato sliders. That's I don't get anything. I
They
mean,
stopped serving potatoes.
I know that's the thing that really made me depressed too. When we went there one time, they're like, "Oh, we're out," and it was like 2 a.m. and I was like, "Okay, come on now, guys, get your act together." But I mean, one thing that we talked about before we started recording this podcast, and it's a myth that I love to bust every single time I have a podcast because it needs to be busted, is that it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there are still so many women that have that fear that if they walk into the gym and they put on, you know, thing of Metallica and they go and they lift one weight, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And first of all, I would spend my entire life savings to train with you then because you have found the secret that, I mean, so many people are looking for. You'd probably be the first ever trillionaire because, everyone would just buy whatever you're selling. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, being a personal trainer, you probably hear that at least a dozen times a day. How do you like to respond to that?
Oh, I wanted it. I wanted to. Well, I mean, I wanted a protective covering. Like you're just a soul walking, Like I wanted something to shield me, like armor. That's what I wanted. So for me, I knew just doing like a little bit of research and based on my own experience with like looking at people and genetics that unless you're using some heavy supplement or a steroid, like there's no way that you can get super cap shoulders. It's just not built within the genetics. So the furthest you can go, I think, is like a very aesthetic, looking figure as a woman. If even if you train your hardest, there's no way without extra supplementation that you are going to look like just this huge bodybuilder walking around like deep, like there's no way. So I think also the media has kind of infiltrated that in a negative ways because people don't know that, some of these women are on gear or any type of steroid. So they're like, oh my God, like, am I going to look like that? Like, no, that's where it's a miss hit or miss because you can look at women who are super toned and this and exactly what you want idealized, and then you can look at someone you're like scared. So what I tell people is like, look, you're only going to reach a point to where your body can handle it. Like your structure was made to handle this specific amount of mass based on your genetics, this specific amount of muscle, this amount of fat in order to protect you. I mean, it's a survival thing. That's what working out is. We're here to survive, survival of the fittest type of thing. So like your body is only going to put on so much before you need more to ever look like what you're scared of. So whatever you can throw on at the gym, whatever you can throw on that squat rack, whatever you can put on bench, if you do that, lift your heaviest. It's not going to hurt you. You're only going to get stronger.
And again, if you do work out once and you look like one of those, like muscle freaks, give me a call because, I really want to talk to you then. But one thing that I think impacts women so much more positively than men, and it impacts men as well, though, is that confidence boost that working out gives you. I mean, we have heard stories on this podcast of hundreds of women who have made, life-changing decisions. It's really helped them, maybe be more assertive, or it's just helped them better their everyday life. And I always say that's the one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact your life in a positive way. How have you personally taken that confidence boost that working out's given you and use it to impact your life?
Oh my gosh. It is, I just want to say for everyone out there, it is the biggest confidence boost you can, because you are a physical being. Like that's what we see. So it's like, it makes me feel stronger in the sense of I know there's a lot of people that struggle with this, and I don't really live in the specific area to where this happens a lot, but like sexual assault, sexual harassment, dealing just with people or, aggressive people or aggressive females, males, just, I think it makes you more confident in your way to assert yourself. Like, okay, if a man comes up to me at this point and tries to make some demeaning comment or tries to say something really rude or even tries to touch me, I have a defense mechanism. Like I have a way to assert myself that's not just within my head. Like I show it to like, don't touch me. And and I personally haven't really had that happen. And I think it's because of the way I started to carry myself. Like I will walk confident and I will walk like, don't mess with me because like I have the ability to, throw a punch. That's just my emotions is like I can get angry. That's what we take out in the gym. I can and I will get angry, but I prefer not to because that's what keeps you calm and collected and have your yin energy. And I think so whenever that's triggered, which it usually isn't, that's whenever you can go off. So really just confidence in the way that you go about your life at that point, confidence in the clothes you wear, confidence in the way if you're single or even in a relationship, the way that you're able to interact with your partner or interact with, whomever you're trying to be with, just, overall a confidence boost. That's so right. It has been a really good confidence boost.
And that's just, and I mean, that's so great. And that's the stuff that people can't see because as much of a physical journey this is 10 times more a mental journey but that's just one thing that people can't see. Like you said, they see your outer shell, they see the physical changes, but unless they really know you deep down and they've talked to you a while, they won't really notice that mental change, which is, vastly more important. But One thing that surprised me more than anything else before I started this podcast, I was a little aware of it, but I didn't pay that much attention to it, is that for so many of these competitors that we have on, posing is the hardest thing for them. It's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than your working out. I mean, I would have never guessed it in a million years. I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What is your experience with posing been like, knowing that, first of all, I mean, you were in bikini and then you moved to figure? I mean, what has this whole posing journey been like?
I really like your analogy about the driving. I'd say in the style of posing you have is almost like the car that you're driving, what type of car and the color. Because like there are so many different ways to pose. Like I really enjoy, and Terrence Ruffin, he's a really great. I remember watching his Survivor posing, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's how you pose. And I know it's weird, like being coming from a male, but really like in that routine, you're able to flow a lot more. And that's why I really like women's physique. Like the real Lois Lane on Instagram, she's really great at posing as well. Um, and so I think it flows. So in bikini, you have to be confident because if you're not confident looking at yourself, walking in that mirror and like doing a pose that you're almost kind of like subjected to do, you're not gonna make it look natural, and you're not gonna make it look like the aesthetic dance. It's supposed to almost look like a dance. You're supposed to look like a put together puzzle that just kind of flows. And so with figure, it was much more natural. One, because I had the muscle mass, and two, I knew what the hell I was doing. And then, even during that time period, I got with like a posing coach. It was actually Terrence. And he was teaching me kind of how to do physique posing, because I think even if you practice a posing style outside of your comfort zone in that regard, like physique, and you try to learn to flow with your body, it makes smaller and more mundane posing so much easier. So posing it was one of the most fun things during my prep, was getting in front of the camera and watching myself like get better and better at posing. And I wasn't even that great back then, over the something, at this, I think a lot of competitors will share this in common, is like at this point you'll look in the mirror and you'll just like start posing, like doing your poses because it feels good. So I think it's almost like a dance.
One thing that impacts women so much, and is I think the hardest thing for them, especially for figure, is flaring their lats. That seems to be one thing that takes them the longest. How long did that take you before you really got that down?
Ooh, um, I'd say probably ugh, like 9 weeks into my prep. So like 3 weeks out, I was really able to like keep it there, keep it steady, keep it like flexed. And I'd say like, yes, that was very difficult, because you would have to sit there for about 3 minutes straight, just like and control, and while in conjunction controlling your abs. You got to keep your abs looking tight. You can't let that tummy come out. You got to breathe correctly. It was sweat. God, it was a workout. It was a workout. And I'd say that was the lesser fun part of posing, was actually having to practice breathing while standing there for such a long, like elongated period of time. But that should come in handy on the stage, because boom, like they tell you to stand there, you're like, all right, like I practiced this.
Well, and they make you wear those high heels too, where it's like, come on, don't these people go through enough already that they got to wear those high heels on the stage? It's just ridiculous. But now we go to the big elephant in the room. I mean, the coronavirus. It's something that's impacted our lives in more ways than we could imagine. I mean, you being a college student probably have been more affected by it than me. But what's this whole thing been like for you? Because I mean, for me, it's just been so fascinating. We're about to get shut down again up here in Minnesota. I think on Sunday they're going to announce it again, just because the cases are drastically rising. But what has this all been like for you, and how have you been able to keep this like somewhat positive mindset, and been able to stay in shape during this? Because so many people have, I think, kind of fallen off, because it's just such an uncertain time for so many people.
I mean, well, thank God that the gyms are open, but whenever everything was closed, it was a struggle. I mean, like I wasn't eating as much. I'd say there was a period of time where I was eating maybe 1,000 calories a day, and I could slowly watch my physical and mental health decline. Um, Luckily, I had like an outside turf area that I could go on, but gosh, even then it was hard. It was hard to be motivated, because really what motivates you is getting out there and being in contact with people. We need people. Like solitude is amazing at times.
You're talking to a cancer man, okay? When you say need people, I mean that's the
Yeah,
definition for yeah.
like that
Yeah.
dependence,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
we are dependent on people in a way, emotionally. And if you don't have someone, but like physically, we also need some type of activity. So I think, first of all, I have my own very weird opinions about the coronavirus. I think, that there's something much bigger at play that we really don't realize, but we must kind of adapt to. We have to adapt to. Like, if we resist, it's just gonna keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Like, no need to resist. Let's just adapt. If the gyms can stay open, let's be grateful. Let's be grateful and wear the mask. Like, do what you can to make everything as consistent as possible. So, like, if I have to wear a mask going in and out of the gym, I don't care. I'm just grateful that the gym is open. If there's machines closed down, I don't care. I don't mind waiting 2 minutes. Like, it's now at this point, I've gotten myself back in shape. In the beginning, it was really hard. And if it closes down again, I do have a plan because I've got a gym here. I know that I can work their at home workouts. I now have like bands and stuff that I can work with. And just, I've always had the mindset to just keep yourself healthy no matter what. And I think in the beginning it was much more of a shock and nobody knew what was going on. But now people are kind of in the know. They understand it's, I think, is more of a political thing as well at this point in our country at least. And so like, let's do our best, guys. Like, let's flow through this. But, I really applaud those that are competing right now because I could not have, I don't have the balls to like put myself in something not exactly knowing like if it's going to end. I want to be free. So I'm happy that the gyms are open and everyone else seems to be doing really well in the midst of all this too. Like all the competitors, they really do look great. Although, the ones you could tell that people were prepping for so long. You could really tell, and I mean, at this point now, I think everyone's getting back in the groove, but I have no idea what the heck is gonna happen. I'm just flowing with it and hoping that everything goes well, and I think it will. I really am optimistic. Like that's probably my best trait is like this optimism of just moving through life. Like it's gonna be okay. It's gonna
Yeah,
be okay.
we had a guest on 3 days ago who had prepped for 9 months because they started in January and then they competed in October. And yeah, they lost like 20 pounds of muscle too because they were just in prep for that long. So yeah, that's a big struggle. But what's college life like now during this coronavirus? Because I mean, this is the one. I mean, luckily, this is the one time I will say that I'm lucky that I'm older than you because if I had to deal with this, first of all, with my ADD, I could not take any classes online because I would not have the interest basically to log in and do all that stuff. But what's college been like during this?
Um, I personally, I believe that I'm paying my tuition to go to my in-person classes. That also is part of a schedule. It's just kind of like it's like bodybuilding in a concept. Making my own schedule has been a little bit more difficult. I also like to choose classes, and I enjoy learning. So like for me, I'm like, okay, I'll go to class because I want to learn about this. I'm also a philosophy major. So for me, like this is a really fun thing to do. I don't have to go to like this boring math class that I really don't enjoy unless you just have orgasms over solving a problem, which I know people do. But like I've been able to adapt pretty well. But it's not as much about the Zoom for me. It's the fact that I'm angry I'm not getting what I paid for in my tuition. I want to go to this in-person class because like okay, no call out to I don't know how other colleges are doing it, but like if you're going to charge me this much money or if you're going to put me on Zoom, like let's change the rates so that we can get this figured out. But that's my view on it. I haven't really had a problem. My grades are still really good, so like nothing has been that affected in that regard.
Which I mean, yeah, if they were still charging me the same tuition, yeah, I would already be like, okay, screw this, I'm going to community college then for the next 2 years or so. Then because yeah, that is absolutely ridiculous. But before when we were talking, you mentioned mind to muscle, and that's one thing that every single time someone mentions it on here, I have to ask them to explain that because I obviously know what it is because it's been explained on this podcast like 20 times. But I'm gonna pretend like that I was born under a rock and I just started this podcast and I have no idea. Could you explain to people what mind to muscle connection is? Because a lot of people hear that and they don't know what it is, but it's something that I think if a lot of more people were aware of it, it would really help them with their workouts.
Yes, absolutely. You're right because you can observe people even in the gyms who don't exactly have that. It's focus. So really, the key to my muscle connection is focus. If you are thinking about something else while you're lifting and you're just going through the motions, that is totally taking away from that. It's the opposite. You have to. Something I suggest is it's whenever you're able to connect your mind to the muscle, the specific muscle, however big, however small that you're training, in a manner to where you can literally feel it, and your mind can feel that. like you can feel a burn when you're doing bicep curls because your muscles are going to get tired. But until you close your eyes, and this is again how I say to start finding that mind muscle connection, close your eyes, do some bicep curls, do, a single bicep curl, single arm bicep curl, touch your bicep and just feel it, like feel it move. Because it's practice too. Um, because then you have mind muscle memory, which is, wherever you do a squat for so many times, it's not that you can divert your thinking while you're doing a squat, but you certainly don't have to close your eyes and really feel. You can do it and put more weight on and not be, something with mind muscle connection is you also got to start out with smaller weight so that you can get that intact. But once you keep doing that, keep practicing that. Something that helped me a lot with that was music. Find a stable beat to go to. Something like a relaxing. I love Rez, so like Relax by Rez. I'm not sure whoever has heard that, but like you got to check it out whenever you work out. It's really great having a specific beat to go to. That way you're just in your mind, but you're able to really go at a consistent beat. So yeah, that I would say mind muscle connection is the focus that you have.
I'll definitely check that out, Res, and I'll definitely give it a listen next time I work out. But time under tension, yeah, it's hey, it sounds good. I'll definitely check it out. But time under tension is one thing that I love to talk about also on the show. Do you like to do that a lot in your training?
Absolutely. So I mean, yes, but there comes a point like that's to break some plateaus. Like if you want to break plateaus, do time under tension. There's a lot of ways to break plateaus. I mean, you can sit there and hold something and really keep time under tension. You're just breaking a plateau, though. To me, that's how I view it. So it's kind of like that little extra cherry on top of your training. I do like pause squats. So like that's something that I engage in probably more frequently than any other like time under tension training. Sometimes when I'm doing a lat pull down, I'll hold, do intervals of like 2, and then slowly release back like a negative. So yeah, I'd say sometimes, but it's definitely not incorporated in like my daily training.
Yeah, well, I'm 6'3", so my lower body is just absolutely shot. So when we're talking about body parts, I mean, I'm the exact opposite of you, where my back was the one thing that really took off. But I did time under tension squats one time. The next day I woke up, I made it 4 steps from my bed before I fell down because it's just that's really, really, really intense. So I have never done that again. But a question that, yeah, it's horrible. But a question that I asked all of the people that listened to this podcast before New Year's last year, I said, "What is one body part that everyone's looking forward to training the most this year?" And the answers were arms, back, legs, hamstrings. I think it did like 16 answers, but arms won by like 5%. Like so many people voted arms. So now I asked most of the guests I have on, what does an arm day look like for you? Because from your Instagram photos that we've seen, you do have pretty nice arms. So what does an arm day look like for you?
An arm day looks like a back day, if that makes sense. Like you start, it shouldn't. Well, I'm nobody to say what you should and shouldn't do. Personally, though, I believe that whenever you start with the primary muscles and the compound lifts, then that's whenever you add in accessories. Like it's not an arm day, it's a chest day or a back day. And then you do your accessory movements. So like for instance, for a chest day, I'll do my incline chest press. I personally like incline, decline builds the lower chest muscle, pectoral muscle. So I personally like as a female, it's just part of my own aesthetic reasoning. But like then I'll move into triceps after that. So I will do like skull crushers, overhead extensions, like tricep extensions at a 90-degree angle. I'll move over to the attachment machine and I'll just do triceps. Really are really not that difficult to train, especially like for me and my goals. Biceps, so I think have been kind of difficult for me to train. Shoulders, I love a good shoulder day. Shoulders are their own thing. I mean, they work with chest, they work with back, but I would say that's the one part of your arm that's like you can do a shoulder day. And so I actually have a shoulder injury right now, which is something I look at in the mirror and I'm like, damn it, they're not symmetrical. One hurts all the time, but I'm like trying to kind of manipulate my training to work with it. There's just not much I can do. The doctor was like, it's kind of like a tear in jeans. You have to stitch it up to fix it. So I've got to like alternate my training, do a lot of stretching with it. But that's always shoulder press. I do a lot of Widowmaker. So I'll go down the line of dumbbells and just almost do almost like 10 or 15 drop sets. It's painful, but man, it's beautiful. It really is. If you want to flip your shoulders up, do a Widowmaker. And then for biceps, I usually do that with my back, and I think whenever you do back and just even with lat pull downs, even when you're doing just like back pulls, you can feel your biceps working with it. And whenever you start to really feel your biceps working, you're like, okay, I need to go do biceps right now. And so I'll just do bicep curls. I'll do hammer curls. I'll do 21s with like a smaller dumbbell. So like I'll take a 7.5 or a 5 and I'll do 21s. So you take, the smaller angle at the bottom and do 7. You do the mid angle of your bicep and then you move up to the top and you do 7. That one's really a killer. And but I would recommend that if you're going to do your arms and then you're also trying to work in a muscle like your back or your chest, you need to do your chest or your back first in order to prevent any injury. Because if you're working and you're exhausting those smaller muscles like your bicep or your tricep first, then you are much more prone to injury whenever it comes to lifting those like deadlifts or rows or chest pressing, because then those smaller muscles that really help that stability within those exercises is completely gone. So that's, I think, a common mistake that people can make is whether or not like, oh, I'll just do biceps first and then I'll go, deadlift. Like you've got to put these in specific order in order to reduce injury risk.
Yeah, and that's one of the best explanations that we've ever heard on this podcast. So that was absolutely great. But one thing that is never talked about that needs to be talked about is it's the most important thing when it comes to recovery. It's the most important thing when it comes to maybe just working out in general and your overall life in general is sleep. I mean, especially when you're competing or in this lifestyle, sleep becomes so much more important. And I mean, I always compare the fact that, if you get a good night's sleep and you wake up feeling super rested, you feel like basically like a superhero. But what is the proper amount of sleep that you like to get? And are there any tips and tricks that you like to tell people in order to get that proper amount? Because especially with this technology that we all have, sleep has become a lot harder for so many people.
Yes, absolutely. That's a really great question. Something I learned early on working out is I don't need more than about 4 hours of sleep to have like a really regular day. I can wake up feeling really energized, and that's just, I think, based on your own energy levels and how that's directed. But I do get around, I'd say 5 to 6 hours. So on the iPhone, you can use the health app and track your sleep if you want. I do that. So at this point, I have something set on it to where at 11 o'clock, it has me wind down and I have to dismiss something on my home screen, like or on the lock screen actually, like in order to access my phone past that time. It's basically telling me to wind down. Then 11:30 it has a little like dun 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 and it's like bedtime. And then from that point on it'll track my sleep. I wake up at 7:15 every morning now. But back then I really didn't have a sleep schedule. I would sleep and that would be enough for me. But I do know that people like struggle with it. I think I also have a lot of anxiety. I struggle really bad with anxiety, so I think that's also something that fuels the body. It's kind of like a fight or flight response, as I've read. So like whenever I wake up, like I'm ready to go. It's almost like it's a positive and a negative. You've got to like view it that way. But with people who struggle with sleep, the best thing to recommend is to work out. I notice that if I don't work out a day, I take a rest day, like a complete rest day where it's not an active rest day. I'm not out doing anything. I'm just like sitting. It is so hard to sleep. I will not fall asleep. I also listen to a lot of meditation at night, especially. I try to get my brain in that zone, kind of like you put yourself in a zone when you're in the gym. You got to put yourself in the zone when you sleep. But like so I actually had one of my friends and she's like, dude, like I just stay up. I don't know why, but I'll stay up until like 2 a.m., but I'll be in my bed. And I'm like, okay, well, where's your phone? And she's like, well, like I just get stuck in Netflix or like I'm watching something. And I think like the biggest thing to do and something that I've done before, but I stopped struggling with it as much as putting my phone on the opposite side of the room, because your phone, any technology you have near you will output its own electric currents like towards you. It will cause you to create energy in your body, whether it be in your mind, in your physical body, like music or anything, anything you have that's technological near you is going to keep you awake, period. So if you're not like attuned to that already. So like my biggest advice is to one, work out and get a really good workout in. If you want a good night's sleep, drink water throughout the day so you're not dehydrated, because I think like something I also notice is it's more difficult for me to fall asleep if my mouth is really dry. It's like my body's like, you need something, you need something. Piss before you get in bed. Make sure to piss. Don't hold in your pee. And also just like put away your technology to your own standard. Like if you know something is bad for you, you know that you're going to want to get on your phone and do this and look at that. Like just put it away. Like you know it's bad, put it away.
No, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And one thing before we wrap things up, I got three questions left here. Is that for so many people, this pandemic has been such a negative thing. But the one way that I think that this can actually turn into a positive for some people, and I'm not saying that it's going to turn into it for everyone, though, is that a lot of people have more free time to do stuff. And this is the one time I think if you really want to get in shape, that it becomes a lot easier for people because I bet you hear this all the time. Oh, I want to get in shape, I just don't have the time. I'm just so busy. And it's like, okay, we all have the same amount of time. That's a whole different tangent. But what advice do you have for people now who are looking to start getting in shape? Because, and plus, it's been proven the healthier you are, the less likely coronavirus is to have a negative impact on you. And so, what advice would you have for someone coming up to you and saying, Jessica, I want to get in shape, but I just don't know how to do it? Because so many people just want to get in shape, but they just lack the knowledge.
Well, first of all, it depends what kind of shape you want to get in. But for anybody who wants to start getting in shape, but they feel they don't have the time or the resources, take a 30-minute walk during your day. Doesn't matter if it's around your neighborhood, it doesn't matter where you go. If you want to see pretty sights, just get out and walk for 30 minutes. If you do that one time every day and you be consistent with it for like a month, you're going to notice differences already. But if you really want to take the next extra step, either, get a coach, do some research. I mean, I wouldn't even go as far as getting a coach. Just do a little bit of research. Look at your fridge and look at every single thing in your fridge that you would feel guilty eating. You just instinctively know that's not good for my body, whether it's processed or too sugary. Like, just think about it. Be conscientious. And then something else about the walking is try running if you have like the ability. There's nothing, no COVID, no gym, nothing stopping you from just taking that extra step from walking to running. And then as far as diet goes, again, like looking at your fridge, looking at foods, the internet I think is an incredible, incredible resource that we have. Like we use it for so many of the wrong things, but we could use it for so many of the right things too. And as ambiguous as the knowledge out there can be and as skeptical as you need to be, I don't think there's anything wrong with looking up healthy foods to eat and saying avocado, nuts, meat, protein. Like it's not going to tell you donuts or this is healthy. Like there's ways to really, you know, change up your diet just with such mundane knowledge. So yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and just go for a walk. I mean, I have a treadmill downstairs, and that's been keeping me company. Now, I mean, if you have 8 inches of snow outside, like we have right now, then it might be a little bit trouble for a walk. So you might want to wait a little bit. But yeah, walking is if you have two able-bodied legs. I mean, that's the one thing that you can really use to get started. But now we go to my moneymaker question. If you could change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, if someone were to walk up to you and say, Jessica, we made the decision, you can change one thing about this sport, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed? See, I saved the $1 million questions for the end.
I mean, that's hard because God, it's almost like a game. Like, if you want to change the rule of a game, what rule would you change? But then that changes the entire game, you know? It's a sport for a reason. So I guess the only thing I can say is probably how natural it could be. I think that limits a lot of people from even joining the sport, is just seeing how not natural it ends up being, or, how also I think bodybuilding can kill you. People, I get it's your passion. It's the passion. It's my passion. It's so many people's passions, but man, like you can't let it kill you, Like die for something you love, but like don't literally let it kill you. You know what I mean? Like there's an extent to that saying. And so I think the extreme amount of unnatural things that go into this sport that end up being contrary to what you're after and striving after that would be what I would change.
Yeah, I mean that and prize money too, where it's like these people are making such little things where it's like, good God, if you're really into bodybuilding, you should be able to make a living off of it and like be able to succeed in that. But that's one thing where I look at it and I'm like, okay. And then there's like baseball players like me, where I mean they're making multi-million-dollar deals and they're in like 1/10 of the shape that a bodybuilder's in when it comes down to it. So I find that to be very funny, as not funny. I find it to be sad, just because I think they should be compensated vastly, vastly more than they
Well,
are.
it's about entertainment, I think. it's not a team sport, you know, it's not well, I don't wanna say that, you know, but in a sense, like, if you're not into bodybuilding, like, it's really not that entertaining to watch. Because 1, you either just wanna look like those people, or 2, you're just like, "What the are these people doing wearing bikinis and little thongs on a stage oiled up?" Like, it's either your thing or it's not. Either you wanna be involved or, like, it's cool to watch just because it's a sport, you know, the competition within it, but I think, like, something that actually has like more of a plot to it, like baseball or soccer or football, is more like it's just a different type of sport. So I get what you're saying. Like we, you know, bodybuilders should be compensated more, but that's what, you know, outside training and is really for. So it's like either make it or break it.
Yeah, I totally get that. And lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Oh my gosh. Shout out to my whole friend group here, my community. I'm going to start with Gina Scafoglio. She's got an Italian last name because she really was someone that inspired me to get into this. Shout out to Daniel Leon. He's got a competition coming up. A shout out to Grant Estelle, not my coach anymore, but he did a really great job prepping me. Shout out to Candace Barks and Barbells because I think she's really an amazing woman. Shout out to Tay Lanier because she did good in her wellness competition and she is a natural lady and I respect that. Um, Gosh, now I'm gonna feel terrible if I leave anybody out, but I got so many more shout outs. Shout out to Nicole Nicoles because she's really cool. She did well in her bodybuilding competition. Shout out to anyone in the bodybuilding community that is working hard and that like I keep in contact with. I can't go through everybody right now just because like it's too much to boggle my brain. But also shout out to Terrence Ruffin. He's gonna do freaking amazing in the next 8 weeks. Yeah. So and shout out to you, man. Shout out to you for being able to do this and take your time to do this.
Oh, absolutely is absolutely my pleasure. I mean, I love having guests come on and share their stories. And one thing that I find so fascinating and great about you is that, you know, like you think of the typical bodybuilder, you don't think about them having such sort of like a zen approach to life that you kind of have. You're kind of like you're one of the outliers where I've never really talked to a bodybuilder. It's like so laid back and chill. Most of them are kind of, you know, go getter and stuff. But I just love talking to you. Then you're such an easy person to talk to. So okay, so I totally forgot that I usually ask this actually as my last question. So if we were to talk to you a year from today, and again, if I would have asked you this a year ago and you predicted a global pandemic and all this stuff, I would have bet my entire life savings against you. So it goes to show, you know, how little I know when it comes to this. But and again, if we're talking a year from today and you hear like gunshots in the background and there's like fires burning, you know, who knows what the future is going to be like a year from now. But
True.
in an ideal world, where would you like to be at in your life a year from today when we talk?
I would like to have bling on my finger and not a wedding ring. I mean, but I don't know about all that. But bling on my finger, I would like to have my Aggie ring. I would like to be hopefully graduated, and I'd like to be starting something like whether it be a business. I just want to have something prosper. I either want to be in a competition, I want to be starting a business, I want to be selling some products that I have created that are kind of in the making. I haven't shared them yet, but I will to a specific targeted group of people that will like them because it does have to do with astrology. But something to where I am more free, I think, in the regard of financially, physically, mentally, just more free. So that again, it doesn't necessarily depend on the external circumstances, but I think that will depict how I adapt. So just a more evolved and healthy version of myself, really.
And we wish you nothing but the best on that. And again, everyone, go and give her a follow on her Instagram page. I highly, highly recommend it. Buyer beware, though. You will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies, just taking a few look at some of her photos. But again, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.
Peace.